Hello there and welcome to another episode of Ringgit Sense, the show where we talk to you about personal finance. I'm Tagaya, your host. Now, last week, most of the BRIM recipients received their first of 3 payments for the year. The maximum amount paid out was 400 ringgit. Now, this payment was given out to help reduce the cost of living for those with a monthly household income of less than 4,000 ringgit. One of the main criticisms, though, of BRIM is that many of these recipients would often spend the money right away, and the money is entirely used up either in the same week or sometimes even the same day. So we wanted to know if this was possible. What if BRIM recipients could set aside part of the money, say 100 ringgit, or try to invest that amount? Now, would it be possible to invest such a small amount each month? So essentially, if you could save up just a portion of the BRIM received, is there any way you can make this money expand and grow? To find out the answers, we spoke to a few financial consultants to find out what would the experts do if they had an extra 100 ringgit to invest.
So the question is, what can you do with 100 ringgit? According to CEO of the Financial Planning Association of Malaysia, Lynette Lee, you need to identify why and how long you want to invest. It's good to engage the advice of a licensed financial planner so that you're aware of how to properly grow your money.
Back in those days when I used to market unit trust, the 100 can go a long way. Whilst less funds are available, but nevertheless there are still funds that are available at 100. And one of them is the Amanah Saham. So that one you can buy. I did a quick check. If you were to put into Amanah Saham, say 3 years ago, because I can't project from now until in the future, but if you have put it in for 3 years, you have gotten an annualized return of 7%. Means your 100 ringgit will give you an extra, another 22 ringgit. Now, where are you? Who's going to give you that kind of money? So, and then I checked with other funds also. The private retirement schemes are designed to help people to even save a small amount. So there are funds that are 100 ringgit as well. For example, there's the AIA Pension Fund, the Afin Huang PRS Fund, and those will give you an average return of between 6.4 to 6.8% per annum.
For licensed financial planner Felix Neo, it's always better to save up more, but the main objective is that you get used to the habit of saving rather than spending right away, no matter what the source of finances may be.
Basically, such a windfall like this, actually there's nothing much that you can really do with, 100 ringgit or 200 ringgit. But I think the most important thing is that you want to inculcate a habit of, setting aside some of these windfalls rather than spending it immediately. So it's so-called inculcating the habit of delayed gratification, right? So everything that comes your way, you want to put aside some money. So you can actually start out with just a savings account or something like that, or those who have ASB, ASN and all that, you can always go and top it up, right? But for those who don't, then you can actually just put it into savings account. But the idea here is that you want to inculcate that kind of habit of saving, putting aside the money so that you can actually use that for some other purposes later on.
So in the past few episodes, we shared tips on how you can plan for married life, how you set a monthly budget to start a family, and even save money to buy a home together. However, not all fairy tales have happy endings. Now, what if things don't go as planned and the marriage is headed for a divorce? Now, here are the numbers for you. Almost 54,000 divorces were recorded in 2016 alone. So what happens if things are heading towards an end? How do you divide your assets, and what happens to you financially? So we have in the studio with us Ong Dan Lin, a licensed financial planner from the Financial Planning Association of Malaysia, to walk us through our discussion today about divorce and money. Hi Dan Lin, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me here today.
Okay,
I hope my sharing today will help some of your viewers.
Yeah, we hope so as well. Now, we're talking about divorce and basically how much does it cost? Now, you were telling us before the show started that it's actually different for different people.
Yes, it's very different for different couples because it depends on the complexity of the case, basically how much it will cost for them in the long run to settle it. Even if it's a joint petition, the duration also differ, but normally it's about 5 to 9 months.
Okay, so let's take into account, let's say it's an amicable divorce. Now that would be quite different as well in terms of costs. So let's say it's a couple with maybe 1 or 2 young children and they decide to have a divorce. Before they actually carry it out, are there any steps to take in preparation?
Okay, if they, well, like we know, actually not everyone will walk down the aisle with a divorce in mind, but in life things happen, people change. So sometimes a couple will drift too much apart for them to even consider remaining as a married couple, even with young kids. So in that sense, if they can come to an amicable divorce, is actually one of the better ways. Okay, so divorce for non-Muslim is normally either with consent or without consent. So with consent, they will file in joint petition. Without consent, they will file in single petition. So, of course, cost-wise, with consent will be a lot more cost-effective, right? Yes, because there normally would not be any contest. So for most joint petition that is not too complicated, the cost will be maybe between 3,000 to 6,000, and it will take maybe 5 to 9 months to complete.
This is the legal fees, you mean?
Yes, there are some court fees, and it differs with the court as well. So that one, because throughout all this, it is best for you to engage a lawyer as well, because all this will be done by them.
Okay, so what about the assets of the couple? Let's say they own a house together. What happens to the house? What happens to the debts that they share?
Okay, if they they jointly own the matrimonial home, what they can decide is whether they can actually decide whether they want to sell the matrimonial home and split the proceeds, or they can also decide to sell the home to either one of them. Or maybe some may not want to sell, some may actually agree, because in most amicable divorce, the couples may actually come to agreement that they will continue to service the loan as it is prior to a divorce. So these are the few scenarios that may happen.
I see, okay. What about alimony? Now, it's different for Muslims and non-Muslims. So how do you actually decide on the amount?
Okay, alimony, actually, a lot of people do not understand it actually works both ways. It's not the entitlement of the wife alone. So a husband actually can seek alimony from the wife if all this while in the household, the wife is the one paying most of the bills.
I see.
And footing most of the expenses.
Okay. If she earns more, basically.
Well, it depends on what the arrangement was during marriage. Because alimony is basically a sum of money to maintain the dependent's lifestyle as per during marriage, and not to be mistaken as a tool to alleviate your lifestyle post-divorce.
I see. Okay, what about some of the parties that we have to inform before we go for a divorce? If it's an amicable divorce, both parties have agreed upon carrying it out. So do you have to inform any parties?
Yes, normally what you do is you can do this even after the divorce. You can inform the banks, update them on your new mailing address, if there's any, update them on your current marital status. You need to also inform your insurance company, do the same thing with what you do with the bank. Then with the insurance, you may actually need to relook into your beneficiaries, your nominees, your trustee, if you want to change them. Then another thing will be EPF. Again, update your latest mailing address. I think EPF is quite aggressive on that lately. Another one would be the nominees again, because you may want to change them. Another thing that a lot of people overlook is the will.
Okay.
Okay. If they have written one in place, they have already written one whilst they're married, actually they will definitely need to revisit, because they need to look again at who they want to appoint as executor, trustee, beneficiary, and guardian for their children. If they do not have one in place, all the more they should have one written as soon as possible, because with minor, it's the only responsible thing as parents you can do for them.
Okay. So basically, our discussion so far has been leading up to preparing for the divorce and what you should do immediately after divorce. Now, we're going to take a short break. We'll be talking more about what actually happens to the individual once the divorce is finalized. So more on that when Ringgit Sense continues. Back on Ringgit Sense with me, Azara Tagaya, and we are still talking about divorce and the cost of divorce with our guest in studio, Ong Dan Lin, licensed financial planner from the Financial Planning Association of Malaysia. Okay, Dan Lin, continuing on our discussion, before the break we talked about leading up to the divorce, preparing for it. So now we want to know, once the divorce has been finalized, how do this newly single parents actually change to a single income family budget from a dual one? How can you actually manage that?
Okay, normally changing from a dual income to a single income can be a little bit challenging initially. However, all it takes is a little bit of financial prudence and to make it work. Okay, first thing you can actually do is, you can actually itemize your monthly expenditure. One way is the fastest way to do it. From there, you actually basically split it to what your needs are and wants are, and identify the leakages. Example of leakages would be like your mobile data plan. So if you only use like 2 gig data a month, why pay 80 ringgit for 10 gig data, right? So that is a leakage. So if you can identify that and stop it or plug it, you find that you can save more. Sometimes when there's debts involved, you actually need to do some debt restructuring to improve your cash flow as well. So once you are able to do that, chances are you should be able to manage it better over the long run.
Okay. So for most single parents, especially people who have only been married a few years, they have young children to take care of. So they have to take into account babysitter fees, for those of them studying, young children, tuition fees. So how, for single parents who are struggling in this department, they cannot anymore afford having a babysitter or sending their children to tuition, what would be your advice to them to prepare themselves financially for the first few years after divorce?
Okay, actually, to be honest, as planners, right, whenever we meet our clients, regardless of their marital status or even their occupation, we always advise our clients to keep aside 6 months to 1 year of their monthly expenses, equivalent as emergency funds. Even though we always say it, but sometimes, a lot of times it's not done. So without those funds, with those funds, things will be a lot easier. However, moving forward for those single parents that no longer can afford babysitter, well, in all honesty, it's in an amicable divorce, normally that would not change too much. Right, because whichever part, they would be able to come to an agreement as to how they want to bring up the children, even though they may not be under the same roof, right? So for amicable divorce, a lot of times the changes may not be too drastic. So what amicable divorce will do is basically, you will not see much disruption in the children's daily routine in that sense.
Okay.
So that's what we are talking about today.
Okay, so let's say it's not an amicable divorce, or they have some arguments pertaining to money and finances, then your advice would be to try and work out a financial plan? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. No matter what your disagreement is, you still need to work it out for your children, actually. Because if the single mother who was previously a homemaker, she may need to get a job.
Yeah.
So you still need to send your children somewhere. Okay. However, in this day and time, right, sometimes homemakers, you can look into those home enterprises. You can look into monetizing something you're really good at doing.
Yeah.
So it can be anything. It can be from sewing, cooking, anything. Almost anything, if you really plan properly, I think it can be monetized.
Especially now, in the era of the internet. So.
Yes, because with Facebook, you can advertise and so on and so forth. So it doesn't really take a lot of capital to start or operate this kind of home enterprises. And basically, it will also give the single mother the time for her to spend with the children. So they actually may not need to look for a babysitter.
I see. Okay, so the key here is to try and gain your own income and grow your finances, basically, if you're a single parent, and also try to work out a financial plan with your ex-husband or ex-wife. That's the key here. Okay,
Yes.
what if the couple previously had bought a home using a joint loan? So what happens then?
Okay, if they have bought the matrimonial home or a property with a joint loan, okay, again, it's the same. They can decide to sell the property and split the proceeds, or they also can decide to sell the property to either one of them at an agreed price. So at the S&P level, you can see the joint ownership will be changed to a single ownership. And if there's a loan to the new the property, then it's the responsibility of the new owner.
I see. Okay, now we have just a few minutes left, and it's a very broad topic, and of course we cannot cover everything in one day. So as your final piece of advice to our viewers, maybe something that you haven't touched on that you want to highlight now, what would be your advice to the viewers of Ringgit Sense?
Okay, divorce is not uncommon nowadays, right? So the best way is normally to handle a divorce is, of course, the amicable way. Okay, so it is actually very difficult to bring up children, right? And it will be more challenging for parents to bring up children if happy children if they themselves are happy. Do you agree with what I say?
Yeah.
So with that in mind, if both parties can come to an agreement and part amicably, nicely, without further hurting each one and the children, I think that is one of the better solutions.
Okay.
And the best way to move on is to basically chalk it up as one of your life experience. And since you have already paid the tuition fees for it, learn from it and move on. So basically, life goes on. And there's a quote that I really like from one author, American author, Maurice Mendel. It says, even the darkest hour has only 60 minutes. And time really flies, especially when you're busy.
Yeah. Okay, so prepare yourself financially, if not for your family, then for yourself in the future.
Yes, correct.
All right. Then thank you so much, Ong Dan Lin, licensed financial planner from FPAM, for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me today. I hope what I've shared will help your viewers.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, now we are going for a short break. Hopefully that discussion has given you some ideas about what to face and actually how to face divorce. After the break, we'll be speaking to a lawyer about the legal fees and also to find out how long the process of a divorce takes. All that when Ringgit Sense continues. Hey there, back on Ringgit Sense with me, Azaria Tagaya. Before the break, we were speaking about what happens financially after a divorce. Now, to get a better understanding about the legal process and its fees, we also spoke to Musa Awang, president of the Sharia Lawyers Association of Malaysia, and here's what he had to say.
According to Musa Awang of the Sharia Lawyers Association of Malaysia, the cost of getting a divorce will differ according to the type of divorce.
Kita ada kes untuk cerai cara baik. Dua-dua pihak setujulah. Okey, itu yang pertama. Yang kedua, kita ada cerai taklid untuk mengesahkan lafaz taklid suami. Lepas tu ketiga, kita ada cerai fasah. Maksudnya mahkamah menghukumkan pembubaran perkahwinan itulah. Yang keempat, dia ada cerai secara tebus talak, bayaran dengan bayaran. So kalau kos untuk legal fee tu biasa bergantung kepada kes yang mana satu. Maksudnya kalau cerai cara baik tu mungkin rendah sikit, mungkin lebih murah sebab di atas persetujuan bersama. Maksudnya dua-dua pihak bersetuju untuk cerai. Tapi kalau taklid tu mungkin di antara yang kedua agak mahal sedikit lah berbanding dengan cerai secara baik tu. Betul, kalau cerai fasah tu mungkin lebih kos dia sebab dia akan melibatkan pembicaraan, kena panggil saksi yang at least 2 orang saksi. Lepas tu cerai secara khuluk ni bergantung juga dengan persetujuan. Maksudnya kalau pihak-pihak setuju untuk bayar, so senang, simple lah. So kos tu mungkin rendah.
In terms of legal advice, a junior lawyer will understandably cost you much less than engaging the services of a senior lawyer. Another factor to consider is the location of the courthouse and the distance the lawyer will have to travel while dealing with the case.
Dia ada satu bayaran untuk peguam, bayaran untuk legal fee guaman, lepas tu bayaran untuk kos kehadiran, dan yang ketiganya untuk bayaran initial disbursement dipanggil, maksudnya belanja hangus yang peguam tu kena bayar kepada mahkamah dari segi pendaftaran. Setiap dokumen yang didaftar tu ada bayaran dia, at least RM3 satu dokumen, yang paling murah lah, dan yang paling mahal boleh sampai ke RM30 untuk satu dokumen saja. Dokumen yang difailkan ke mahkamah tu, setiap dokumen tu dia ada kiraan. Contoh macam affidavit, minimum dia RM4 satu affidavit, dan setiap lampiran yang kita attachkan tu dalam affidavit tu RM1.
With the worry of legal fees and other costs of separation, what options are available for those who feel they aren't able to afford engaging the help of a lawyer?
Sekarang ni kalau kes cerai, Jabatan Bantuan Guaman ada buat. Kalau di seluruh Malaysia, setiap negeri dia ada Jabatan Bantuan Guaman, tapi di ibu negeri lah. Dia tidak ada di daerah-daerah kecil, tapi di ibu negeri. Dan kalau di Selangor mereka ada bahagian bantuan guaman yang dibuat di bawah Jabatan Agama Islam. Yang tu termasuk kes cerai. Dia hanya buat untuk kes-kes tertentu saja, dan kes cerai adalah termasuk dalam bantuan yang diberi. Yang kedua, yang ketiganya, mungkin pihak-pihak NGO pun ada buat legal aid, termasuklah majlis peguam, dengan bayaran yang minimum lah, maksudnya dalam 200-300, tak sebanyak bayar untuk peguam yang kita lantik secara private ataupun swasta. So ada 3 pilihan, banyak pilihan sebenarnya untuk mereka yang tak mampu ni. Cuma bila lantikan untuk panel bantuan guaman ni, sebab dia servis tu dibuat secara percuma ataupun dengan bayaran yang rendah, so dia punya proses tu mungkin akan mengambil masa sedikit lah.
In any case, if the unwanted happens and you're faced with this situation, it's best to be well informed and educated on your rights and how much you will actually need to fork out if ever the time comes for couples to untie the knot.
Now, what we discussed today is only a contingency plan. We hope you're now aware of the financial cost of a divorce. Now, all the interviews you watch today will be on our Facebook page, Ringgit Sense TV3. So if you know someone who needs the advice we talked about today, share it with them through Facebook. I'm Masalah, and I will see you next week with more personal finance tips. Until then, invest and spend wisely.